Good evening, everyone, and most warmly welcome to this first press conference of today here in Kesäranta. We are going to have quite plenty of these today because Prime Minister is having many important guests today, the first one being the Irish Prime Minister. We start with short statements. Prime Minister Sipilä, please.
Thank you. Dear Prime Minister, my colleague Leo, you are warmly welcome to Finland and Kesäranta. I think that our countries are like-minded in many issues in European Union level. As a small country, we share same values, and in many issues we can find each others to cooperate in European Union level. We discussed today about the Brexit issue. Of course, this is especially important for Ireland, and there is 100% support from Finland to Ireland, and you can count on our support in our discussions. I said also that I had a feeling that all the 27 countries are unity behind in Irish question. We discussed about the time schedule also, that and we agree that almost all the issues are in the landing zone, so hopefully we can find a solution before the end of this year. In EMU, we shared our opinions also. In December's European Council meeting, we will have a very important discussion. We both are a part of a so-called Hansa Group, and we have same position on that issues. In European budget MFF, we especially share our interest in agriculture. We have same position on that field also. We discussed about migration, about EU-Russia relationship, and also Finnish presidency in the second half of next year. It will be a very challenging period for Finland because we have our own elections in April. We will have EU parliamentary elections in late May, early June, and budget is open. Brexit, future relationship is open, and so on. Our focus will be in single market, trade, job creation, and security issues in our presidency. Thank you, Leo. It's your turn now.
Thank you very much, Juha, and thanks very much for hosting me here in Helsinki. I'm delighted to be the first, I think, of 7 heads of government or institutions you're going to meet today. You may not be attending the EPP Congress, but you virtually are, given that you're meeting everybody on the way in. When I was reading my briefing before I came to Finland, I was reading about a country of 5 million people with a strong economy that's very much based on tech, an economy with a big agricultural sector, a country with a very large neighbour to the east, a neutral country, a member of the European Union, a founder member of the Euro, a country that became independent in 1917 and briefly after had a civil war. And I kind of wondered if I got my briefing document mixed up, and was I reading the history and politics of Ireland rather than the history and politics of Finland? And I think in many ways that experience just demonstrates how like-minded and how similar Ireland and Finland are, even though we're at the different edges of the European Union. So this was a very useful meeting in that regard, to talk about bilateral relations between Ireland and Finland, which are very good and very strong, and how we can be allied and work together on international issues such as climate change and international development and in the United Nations, also on European issues where we're part of the Hansa Group, the like-minded group of Nordic Baltic countries, also including Ireland and the Netherlands, on how we see Europe developing economically in terms of the deepening of European Monetary Union, commitment to free trade in particular, Also spoke about Brexit, and I really want to thank Juha again for Finland's strong support and solidarity for Ireland as we enter what I hope are the last few weeks of these negotiations, or at least the last few weeks of negotiations on the withdrawal agreement. We will then have to start many months and years of negotiations on the future relationship after that. And also as well to talk about relations with Russia, where I think we both agree that the sanctions are necessary, but also that it's important to have dialogue between the European Union and Russia as well as a very large neighbour. So a good chance to touch on a lot of issues as well. We talked about the MFF and negotiations on a future European budget. And again, similar to Ireland, Finland is a net contributor. But also we have a very big agriculture and forestry sector, and we'd have a particular interest in preserving and protecting the budget for CAP. So very good meeting, and thanks again for having me, and really hope you get a chance to come to Dublin.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we have time for a few questions. Kindly introduce yourself and your media. We start with the Irish one.
Hi, Paddy Smith, Irish Times. A question really for the Taoiseach. I want to ask you about the review of the backstop, which we're talking about at the moment. And there's been some conditionality imposed by the Irish, certainly in terms of it has to be a mutually agreed review. But I just wanted to ask you specifically, the critical condition for an abandonment of a backstop must be that the comprehensive agreement that is done with the UK safeguards the border and the frictionless border more and better than the backstop would. And can you elaborate on that? And then secondly, can I just ask you in relation to the EPP, how can you, as the leader of a liberal progressive party, ask voters throughout Europe to support the party of Orbán and Berlusconi?
Yeah, on the first question first. For me, it's always about the objective, more so than the mechanism. What are you actually trying to achieve? And what we're trying to achieve is a guarantee that a hard border won't emerge between Northern Ireland and Ireland. And the backstop is just part of that. We hope that the backstop will never need to be used. It is an insurance policy, and we hope that if it is ever used, that'll only have to be temporary. But in order for the backstop to be a backstop, if it is ever invoked, it must apply unless and until a new agreement supersedes it that achieves the same objective, which is avoiding a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. And that's a commitment that's been there from the UK. It was there in December, it was there in March, it was there in June. And now we need to get that written into a legally operable text in the withdrawal agreement. As I said yesterday in the Dáil, I think in order to come to agreements, whether it's coalition agreements or international treaties, you have to be willing to be creative around solutions, you have to be willing to be creative around language, and that's why we're willing to consider a review clause in the backstop. But it can't be one that would allow the United Kingdom to resile unilaterally from its commitment that there should be no hard border on our island. On the second question, in relation to the EPP, I think it's important to bear in mind that all of the European parties are umbrella parties. EPP, of course, includes Fidesz and the party of Berlusconi, which you mentioned, in the Liberal group, which Fianna Fáil is part of. Strange, Fianna Fáil is in the Liberal group, but they are. But Fianna Fáil being in the Liberal group, of course, in that is Babiš, is the party, the ANO party in Czech Republic, which has policies very similar to Mr. Orbán's in Hungary. And of course, many of the people in the Social Democrat group, many of the parties there used to be card-carrying and practicing communists and everything that used to come with that. So the nature of European parties is that you have always a number of unusual bedfellows in your party, but I'm not asking people to vote for those parties. When people vote in the European elections in Ireland, I'm asking them to vote for Fine Gael, and I'm asking them to vote for the EPP and our policies and our values. And the policies and values of the EPP are ones of liberal democracy, of Christian democracy. We are the people who saw off communism, we are the people who saw off fascism, we are the people who brought about enlargement, and that's what I'm asking people to vote for, or will be anyway.
Maybe we have also real liberal solutions in the European Parliament.
Okay. I'm afraid we won't have time to take any more questions because the Irish Prime Minister has a very tight timetable as well. So we have to close this one. Thank you very much, everyone.
Should we take one from Kevin, considering if that's okay?
It's your decision.
Yeah, okay.
It's your decision. That's
Considering
fine.
you've come all the way.
We have time.
Okay.
We have that, yes.
Two quick ones then, just for both Prime Ministers, on the timelines for getting a Brexit deal, including a possible review mechanism. Do you think that can still be done in November, given what is going on in London at the minute and the push for Theresa May? And just on domestic issues, Taoiseach, your call yesterday for doctors and nurses to work more over the Christmas period has been met with the expected, I suppose, the Dáil closes down for 3 weeks at Christmas. Where are you? How do you propose to enforce that idea that medics should work more over Christmas in order to alleviate the inevitable crisis that's coming?
Well, if I ask the first one first, I think the timeline, it's doable in November, but I think that lately in December we have to find a solution, and in our December's meeting there is a possibility to find a solution. It's all the issues are in the landing zone.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think it's possible for us to come to an agreement in November with a view to having a summit in November. But I do think as every day that passes, the possibility of having a special summit in November becomes less likely. But we do have one scheduled anyway for the 13th or 14th of December. So not getting it done in November doesn't mean we can't get it done in the first 2 weeks in December. But I think beyond that, then you're into the new year, which wouldn't be, which I think wouldn't be a good thing. Just on health. As you're right, people will always misrepresent what you say. That often happens when you speak the truth in politics. But the situation is as simple as this, and I'd say two things. Every business, every industry, every service has a period of peak demand. If you're working in retail, it's the week running up to Christmas. If you're working in education, it's the first week or two of September. If you're in politics, it's budget week and the few weeks around the budget. If you're in tourism, it's the summer period and the bank holidays. And it makes sense, if you're running your service or your business well, to always make sure that you match peak demand with peak resources. So we know peak demand happens in our health service in the first 2 weeks in January. Therefore, it makes sense that the minimum number of staff should be on leave during that period. No beds should be closed because people are on leave. The emergency department and medical consultants should be there. The surgeons can take their holidays during that period because most of the operations get cancelled anyway. So it's a question of meeting peak demand with peak resources. And that's the norm across industry, the norm across services. It should be the norm in the health service as well. It shouldn't be a controversial comment to say that when we have peak demand, when patients need our staff most, they should be there. And that's what I'm saying. And that hasn't always been the case in the past. We also need to look at that whole period. What happens in early January is entirely predictable. We have a period between Christmas and New Year. About 12 days between the 22nd of December and the 3rd of January. 7 of those are weekends or bank holidays, and hospitals operate effectively on a skeleton staff. Radiology departments don't work at full throttle, laboratories don't work at full throttle. So patients come in, they don't get their tests, they don't get their diagnosis, they don't get their treatments. The numbers add up and up and up, and guess what happens in the first week in January? So what I'm saying is that needs to change this year. We need to have more activity in the hospitals during that period, during the holiday period. And of course staff would be paid for that. And of course they would get their annual leave entitlement. But you do need to match your resources with your demand. I wish I had the authority to do that, actually. And this is one of the biggest difficulties we have in our health service. Politicians and government have certain responsibility, but ultimately under law, the health service is run with the HSE. But I'm saying to the HSE what I think should be done. And here's a fact, and I really would like the Irish people to hear this. We have put huge amount of additional resources into our health service in the last 2 years. We have record budgets, record financial resources. We have 1,500 more nurses than we had 2 years ago. We have 10,000 doctors now, more than ever before. We have more emergency department consultants than ever before, and we have 250 more beds than we had this time last year. So it should be obvious to everyone that more money, more staff and more beds on its own won't work. We need to properly manage and deploy those resources when they're most needed. And that's what I'm saying to the HSC that I want them to do.
Thank you very much, Prime Ministers.
Right. Thank you.